actually maximizing his profit, meaning that he will be giving you a wage which is equal to your marginal revenue of product. Okay, but if it's a discriminatory employer, then what he will do, he will hire you at a much lesser wage because there's a prejudice. So there will be a certain discount factor that would be added to your wage, which will be deducted. So as a result, you would be paid a less wage. So basically, guys, larger the discrimination or larger the prejudice, the discount factor would be larger, meaning that employer does not have a confidence in your skill because you belong to a certain gender or you belong to a certain race or ethnic group. Okay, so this was the thing, and we did one diagram based on that. Okay, so guys, also before having said the types of discrimination, we talked about two types of discrimination. Guys, do you remember two types of discrimination? Largely, these are the reasons, different models, but there were two types of discrimination which actually stems in the labor market.
Wage and occupation.
Correct. So guys, one is your wage discrimination and other is your occupational discrimination. What is the difference between the two? What is the difference between the wage and occupational discrimination?
Ma'am, I guess in wage you do exactly the same kind of work but still are given differential wages, and in occupation you do different works only, which is why the wage differential is there.
Yeah. So guys, of course, as the name is counterintuitive in a sense that wage differential is that even though you are on the same job profile, okay, you are hired for the same job, but the fact is you belong to a certain gender or a minority group, you are being paid less. Okay, whereas your occupational segregation or a discrimination is based on the fact that because you belong to a particular gender or a ethnic group, you would be even though your human capital, or that is your all the productive factors, that is education, training, skill, experience, it might be par with all the people, but because you belong to a certain group, you would be given a profile which will give you a less pay. Okay, that becomes your occupational segregation or discrimination. So guys, I'll just quickly run through what I thought. So guys, so the second part of your discrimination is the statistical discrimination. So guys, basically in this discrimination, what is happening, so we know that it is very difficult to find out about a your about the productivity of a employee when I'm hiring them. Okay, so basically how do we find out the productivity of any employee that we are hiring? It is through some kind of an interview. It would be some kind of an aptitude test that he gives during that whatever the process is happening. So basically a firm will try to in order to really understand about the productive features of that person. So what they do, that firms evaluate the personal characteristics of applicant, understanding their potential productivity. So guys, first thing is that they need to find out. So what happens in the statistical discrimination, in order to figure it out about the productivity of your employee, they utilize two features. One is the personal characteristics, but again, personal characteristics are just one feature. So in order to make sure I can get more information on the productivity, what does the employer does? It find out certain average characteristics of the group which you belong to. Okay, so I combine the personal characteristics which is observable through the test or the interview that you go through, plus certain characteristics because you belong to a certain group. Okay, so now when I associate or when I say I stereotype you because you belong to a certain group, it might add to an advantage or it might add to a disadvantage. So guys, basically statistical discrimination factors in when I associate a particular individual on the basis of certain group characteristics. Okay, and if I found that a person belongs to a black or or a female category, then I may say that because they are less productive, as a result, even though your personal characteristics might be very very high, but because of that group characteristics, your productivity might be rated low. Okay, so if your marginal revenue productive is being rated as low, as a result your wages would be low. So guys, that is what it is saying, that if group characteristics are factored in into your hiring decision, then statistical discrimination can result, even if in the absence of personal prejudice. Okay, so even if your personal characteristics are good, there is no prejudice, okay, you are very well, but still because they want to find out more information about your productivity, they try to factor in certain group information, and if that goes against you, then that might be a source of your statistical discrimination. Okay, so guys, of course, this is elaborating further that what are the personal characteristics, that is productivity, education, experience, age. So that is what they are saying. And a very important part actually talks about that statistical discrimination can be viewed as a part of a screening problem, which arises when observable personal characteristics that are correlated with the productivity are not perfect predictors. Okay, so guys, basically it's not about perfect predictors where employer is not confident about your skills or your productivity, he wants to fetch in more information. Okay, so that is the case when we try to you can say complement these personal productive traits with your group characteristics. Okay, so guys, there is a certain example which is telling us about the problem of this screening discrimination or statistical discrimination. So guys, basically they are saying, I'm just summing up what they are trying to say. So like they are hiring someone for a typist or a you can say PA or a sectorial job. Okay, now you have to type in. One has to see the testing that how fast you can type. So there are two types of people, groups. Okay, so one is the group which can type 70 words per minute over a certain time they have been given. Then there is a certain group which can type only 40 words per minute. Okay, now the thing is, actual productivities are not known to the employer, but they know that these are the two groups which they belong to. Now the thing is, now employer does a small 5-minute test. Okay, now they say you do a test and we will figure it out that whether you belong to this group or that group. Now the thing is, there could be a bias. So you someone who actually has a score of 40 words per minute got lucky at that time and may be able to perform much better and score somewhere around 70 and above. Okay, then there might be some people who might get unlucky as a result, that even though they can score easily on an average 70 words per minute, they actually score somewhere around 45 or 50. Okay, now the thing is, they keep a benchmark of 55, which is an average. Now the thing is, what happens in this case when we try to stereotype with these groups, or when we say that these are the two groupings on which we are basing and then we set up the test limit. So what would happen, that because of this group limitation, okay, that I'm characterizing, what would happen, some people who are bad but they perform well during the test would be taken up, whereas those whose average performance is good but they perform bad due to some luck or bad luck basically, or for some other reason, they are actually not selected. Okay, so as a result, when we try to group people on certain criteria and then using that group information will actually land us into this problems. Okay, so guys, it is that is what they are telling in this example. So I'll just sum up what the general lesson that we need to take up, that firms use both the individual data, test score, experience, skills, education, so on and so forth, and group data in making your hiring decision. When the former are not the perfect predictors of productivity, when they don't give you a much greater information. However, this group data can give rise to the market discrimination because people with some measured productivity will be treated differently on a systematic basis because they belong to a certain group or affiliation. Guys, I hope this part is clear regarding the statistical discrimination. What is the source of statistical discrimination? Okay. So, guys, basically, when I use group data and I stereotype you, okay, that is one thing. Now, guys, we talk about your non competitive models of discrimination. These are very easy, guys, very small portions. So, guys, it is about your basically where it, because it's saying your non-competitive models. Okay, so basically there would be some kind of monopoly or some kind of collusion between the people or the employers who can actually discriminate against certain gender, minority, or ethnic groups. Okay, so guys, basically there are four types of, you can say, models which we are looking into. So guys, crowding. First type is a crowding based non-competitive model of discrimination. So what it is? So guys, you can see in the diagram itself, crowding is basically, as the name says, we are actually bombarding a particular sector with so many people. Okay, so guys, if you have excess supply, what generally happens to the wages? If there is an excess supply, wages go down, and if there is less supply, your wages will go up. So guys, that is what the exactly your crowding hypothesis is. So guys, it says that existence and extent of occupational segregation, especially by gender. So guys, this crowding is specifically relating to your gender discrimination, have caused some to argue that if the result of a deliberate crowding policy, that is, I would make a certain sector crowd out so much so that the wages are pulled down. So basically, I'll make sure that a particular sector has abundance of gender, particularly female in that. And we know that if there is a large population or a particular gender, what would happen? Their wages will come down. Okay, so they will deliberately do that. Okay, so that's a different thing that we have to figure it out. What are those sectors we try to do? We could actually name. There are many sectors which are less productive, or are, where unskilled labor is required. You would find such kind of gender or minorities working. As a result, what happens? Their wages actually comes down. So guys, it says is a result of a deliberate crowding policy intended to lower wages in certain occupation. So guys, if you would see the diagram, they are very simple diagrams: supply, demand, supply, demand. In one case, your supply is less, so wages are higher. Where there is, it's an uncrowded sector, you can say it's a skilled, uh, you can say occupation. Whereas in the panel B, you can see where there's a abundant labor, or the sector has been crowded out with a particular set of people, and you can see your wages are actually brought down. It could be an unskilled occupation. So phenomena behind this crowding out is that if men and women are equally productive, one would think that the lower wage of women caused by their artificially crowded into the certain jobs would make it attractive for the firms now employing men in other jobs to replace them. With less expensive women workers, this profit maximizing behavior will eliminate any profit. So, guys, of course, it's a non-competitive model. So, major objective is to generate lot of profit. So, what they will try to, they will artificially accelerate or pump in lot of people in a particular sector. As a result, wages will come down for that particular gender. So as a result, what they will do, they will try to hire them more and more. But of course, then as a result, your market mechanism would work, that this profit initiation would also start to fall, and as a result it will eliminate all the profit. So guys, of course, this thing definitely happens, but it's rarely. Okay, but you can observe, so crowding out happens, but guys, generally it is in the part of your unskilled task. Okay, not the skilled one, where you would not find certain kind of people working for that. Okay, so guys, this is one crowding out. Other is your dual labor market. So this is more interesting, a part of crowding out itself, where we divide your different you can say different types of labor based on different types of job. Okay, so guys, a variant of a crowding hypothesis, which is relatively new. So what do? They actually divide the labor market into two types of sector: primary and secondary sector. So guys, what is a primary sector? Which is a high paying job, which has a stable employment, good working condition, and opportunities for advancement. Whereas a secondary job, which is a low paying, unstable, dead end job, very poor working conditions. Okay, now dualists assume that mobility between the two sectors are limited. Of course, they would be limited because the kind of people I'm asking to work. So workers relegated to the secondary sector are unstable, undesirable, and little hope for acquiring a primary sector because they don't have that capacity or the skills. So dualists continue, a large proportion of minorities and women have been employed in the secondary sector, and leads to a perpetuation of discrimination against them. Minorities and women are argued to be discriminated as they tend to have unstable work histories, but these histories are themselves a result of being unstable to break into the primary labor market. Okay, so guys, of course, crowding, as I was telling you, that why they are able to crowd out a particular sector because they are able to segregate labor market based on certain occupations. So that comes from your dual labor market. Guys, I hope this is clear, both the things. Okay. So guys, then we move towards a search related monopsony, basically the ones who buys. So again, it's a combination. So guys, crowding and dual labor market discrimination model are based on the assumption that workers assigned to occupational groups have very limited mobility. They cannot move. So this third model of restricted mobility, it's an extension of that, hinted about the restriction on mobility is due to the presence of job search cost for employees. Okay, so guys, there is always a search cost that one has to undertake when we are applying for certain jobs. Okay, for some the search cost might be very low, for some the search cost might be very high. So if they have a very large search cost, of course that would mean that the ultimate wage they get will be lower. Okay, so why does that happen? This is actually explaining. So basically what they're saying that because of a very high search cost, ultimately some particular, you can say, segments of labor get trapped into your secondary jobs, okay, which are actually low paying jobs because their search cost is so much. So as a result, what happens? They ultimately give up and they stick to the job which are actually low paying jobs. Okay, so guys, this model combines monopolistic model of firm behavior with prejudice model. Okay, so guys, why prejudice model? It's because that employers doesn't allow them to enter this different good paying jobs. Okay, because the information is not easily disseminated from their end. Okay, so guys, it says suppose some, not all employers refuse to hire minorities or women owing to their own prejudice. In contrast, no employers rule out the hiring of the white males. Okay, so guys, there are two assumptions we are talking about. That in the first case, there is a prejudice against your women and minorities, but there is no employer who says no to a white male if he's coming for a job. Okay, minorities and women looking for a jobs don't readily know who will refuse them out of hand, so they have to search harder and longer than do the white men to generate the some number of job offers. Okay, same number of job offers. So guys, basically they have very high probability that they will be keep on rejecting because they don't know whether they will be actually invited for the interview or not. Whereas for the white men, there's a high probability that at least they will be called for the interview, or the existence of at least some discriminatory practices of employers increases the search cost of minorities and women and make them less mobile than white men. So they get trapped. Okay. So point to be remembered that employee search cost would create labor supply curve which is upward sloping to individual employers, which increases the marginal cost of the labor above the wage and induces monopolistic behavior even in the labor market with many employers. So labor supply curves, which are more steeply sloped, creates a big divergence between wages and marginal labor cost. So guys, I'll just show you the diagram rather than just reading this part. So guys, if you will look into these two panels, panel A, panel B. So guys, panel A is for an individual who has a very low search cost. Basically, your, you can say, white males. Okay, and whereas in the panel B there is a very high search cost. So guys, of course, demand curve MRPL downward sloping. The supply curve, you can see, is, for one it is flatter, for the other it is steeper. Reason being, they are inculcating very large cost in order to find out that whether they can apply for this job or for the other job or not. Their information cost is very very high. So guys, as a result, there for the white, they would have a flatter your supply curve. For the female or the minorities, it would be a very steeper, you can say, supply curve. So guys, great. So flatter the curve, you could see that there is a less divergence between your MRPL and the wage that is being offered. Whereas if you would have a steeper curve, you could see that there is a large gap between your MRPL and the wages that are being offered. Okay. So guys, one has to be very careful. So I'll just read this part, guys. Guys, I hope this is understandable. So demand curve, supply curve. So steeper curve basically for the ones who have a very large cost they are inculcating when they are applying for different jobs. So guys, within this curve, one is the supply curve and other one is a MEL or MELF. So basically, this is a marginal, you can say, expenditure that an individual does for inquiring an extra information. So this is a curve which is showing your information cost. That is the curve. So it is a difference between MEL and SM gives you the information cost. Okay. So guys, you could see steeper and a flatter. That has to be remembered. So those who would have a steeper curve would have a larger divergence between their productivity and the wages they are ultimately being offered. Okay, so guys, it says that the panel it depicts the supply and the MRPL of the group, particularly males, with which those who have the low search cost. Because of the small search cost, small wage cut would lead to working many workers leaving the job. Similarly, a small rise in the wage would increase the applicants to a large extent. So what guys they are saying, so basically because their search cost is so less, so they have a very high incentive. So suppose there is a reduction in their wage in a particular factory, so what would happen? Because they don't really have to indulge in a lot of transaction or the search cost, so what they will do, a lot of people will start shifting towards those factories which are providing them a larger wages. Similarly, if there is a jump in the wage, a lot of new white males will start to apply. So as a result, there is a flatter supply curve which is adding to this part. Because of this, supply curve is relatively flat and associate marginal expense of labor curve. So extra effort or extra expense they are incurring for the applying of the job is relatively flat. So profit maximized for the firm will hire EM and pay the wage WM, which is slightly below the MRPL. Okay, so they will hire at the WM, though the MRPL, because it's a profit maximizing, non-competitive firm. Okay, so they will try to maximize the profit. So there will be a small difference between MRPL minus WM, which would be their profits. But whereas because these people, gender or female or minorities, they have very high search costs. So every marginal expense would also rise substantially. So though they will hire EF labor, but there's a huge difference between the marginal productivity and WF. So of course the profits would be very larger to the person, but there's a larger gap between the wages they actually receive. Okay, so this divergence is very high. So workers with a high search cost are paid lower wages. WF is of course less than WM. At a practical level, if members of both groups hired by a given firm, those with a higher search cost are placed into the lower job titles. Okay, so that would automatically happen. Okay, so guys, this is the last one, last sort of a discrimination that we need to discuss. It's a collusive behavior. Okay, so, guys, it says that some theories are grounded on the assumption that employers collude with each other to subjugate minorities or women, thus creating a situation in a monopolistic wages can be forced on the subjugated group. Very important. I think that would generally be happening in order to have these dual markets, or in order to create these kind of a higher search costs that they have to pay. There has to be a certain collision in the market that would be happening. One of the most cognate and a complete collusive theory of discrimination argues that the prejudice and the conflict it creates are inherent in a capitalist society because they serve the interest of the owners. Okay, even if the owners of capital do not want to create prejudice, they nevertheless find if they continue, it will enhance their profits. Okay, also, workers divided by race or gender are harder to organize, and if they are able to create the unions, are less cohesive with their demands. Okay, because in union there will be one or two demands which would be relegated. Ultimately, some of the demands will not be relegated. Though at point unions are good, but at times your demands get segregated. Okay, that also happens. So it generally minorities and women who actually lose because of any sort of a discrimination, whether coming from any sort of a model, whether competitive or non-competitive, it will be coming, but they will be the one who will be the ultimately losing. So guys, this collusive behavior is just, they are trying to say that how we try to make sure that there is a sort of a discrimination. Basically all your firms try to collide together. They kind of create a oligopoly market in which they try to make sure that we are able to subjugate or provide wages lower to a particular section who is actually seeking for a particular job. Okay, that's a simple theory. And why they say, because it's very inherent in any capitalist. Okay, so that's a behavior of a capitalist, so that they segregate the labor and extract a larger profit. Okay, maybe prejudice might not be involved, but the fact is they want to earn a larger profits. Okay, so that is your last form of discrimination in your non-competitive models of labor market. Guys, I hope this is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so guys, then there is guys, I'm just, it's 5:04, by 5:10 I will wind up, okay, this theory. So guys, what are the different ways of combating discrimination? Though basically those are your all federal reserves, basically how the Fed does to make sure that there is no discrimination, so that you can read. But there is a one part of comparable worth, okay, which is important. Generally there is a numerical which turns up from this section. So guys, let's talk about, instead of paying equal pay for equal work, they are saying that at least a comparable worth of pay should be made for the people who are actually hired on the same job. So they say some support the goal of equal pay for the jobs of comparable work. So at least the jobs which are of a comparable worth, they should be paid equal wages. So what do the proponents of comparable worth argue? That a male occupation of maintaining machine pays $10 per hour, while a female job of child rearing pays half of that. So should those take care of human being paid less than those who take care of machine? So actually that is the argument, that why it should be like that. The people who are maintaining or having a technical job should be paid more, but the ones who are raising the people who would ultimately maintain machine or take care of the technology are paid less. Okay, so then the author is talking about something called water diamond paradox. So we all know that ultimately that what was the solution, or what was the paradox in this, that though water is abundant, okay, and so water is abundant, so the marginal value that it adds is actually very less. Okay, so as a result the price is actually dependent upon of its marginal utility, which is very very less. So as a result the price of water is very low. So similarly diamond, which is very less, it's scarce, so as a result the marginal utility one derives from the utilization of diamond is very high, so price is dependent upon that. So that is one of the reason which people say that that could be a reason why there is a discrimination. But having said that, they say why mechanics are still paid more on the child care workers. So guys, I have not written the major part, that you can see it is actually a repetition or trying to substantiate that why there is a difference between their wages. So I've not elaborated what they have written. So it's about water diamond paradox. So guys, it says that economists answer in terms of market forces, that supply of mechanics are relatively small. So if their supply is small, demand is larger, of course they would be paid a higher price in terms of wages, and their skills are specialized. But whatever the reason might be, wages are the price of the labor. It play a critical role in the allocation of resources that they are. Of course the market will allocate in such a way that if there is a certain kind of scarcity, the prices would be higher, so they will allocate in the best way. But most economists advise modifying demand and supply behavior that cause unequal outcome rather than treating the symptoms or regulating wages. Okay, so it is important to look into the sources rather than just talking about the behavior or why this thing is happening. So guys, it says that if wages of a childcare workers were to be raised above the market clearing level, so guys, comparable worth law says that doesn't matter, it should be at least comparable to what the technicians or the engineers are getting. So guys, what would happen? So if you are actually increasing the wages of the childcare workers, so guys, if the wages increases, it motivates lot of people to enter into that market. So as a result, lot of people would start to enter. But the thing is, already there is a lot of supply in the market. So there will be an excess supply. As a result, what happens? And lot of people would not be ready to pay that much wage as well. So what happens? Excess supply. If there is an excess supply, what happens? There will be lot of people who would start to lose up the job as well. Okay, so as a result, though the comparable worth wants everyone to pay a very higher wage, but because that you can say that service is not largely paid a greater earning, or it is a kind of an unskilled, which we say, ultimately what happens, there's a lot of unemployment that sets into that, or you can say in that particular sector that we are talking about. And that is not only with the child rearing system. You would see ultimately the combination of supply and demand is very very important. Though we talk about comparable worth law, but we really have to look into the dynamics of your supply and demand. Okay, so if there's a already large supply and there is not large demand, then even if you increase the wage, it will automatically just increase your unemployment, nothing else. Okay, that would add a more of a trouble. And what would happen? Who will get those higher wages? They would be just the people who have very high quality, very highly qualitative, or those who will be very very skilled. So basically the best of the mind will fetch the job, others will lose out, average would lose out. So guys, it says, however, proponents of the comparable worth law dismiss and argue employers are not passive wage takers and pay efficiency wage, as they are concerned with the employee's perception of fairness in compensation. Okay, they say they will still pay because they're concerned about what the employees think about. Of course, in reality, that very few sectors would be where they would be concerned about what employees think about whether the fairness is there in the system or not. In such, employers often use complex job rating schemes to determine the internal pay differential associated with the job titles and promotion. So, guys, so ultimately, what now they are saying that in order to have a comparable worth, that means I have to compare. So, I have to make sure that you have that much productivity so that I can pay a comparable worth to all the genders or minorities. So if I'm paying a white male $900, then I have to figure it out that whether you are also worth that job or not. Okay, so they come up with a certain rating. So I will rate you. So if your ratings are 5 star, then I will give you $900, which is equal to what a white male is going. Okay, so comparable worth is again determined by using some kind of a productive factors. In this case, a rating system. So, guys, it says it is precisely these job rating system that comparable worth advocates propose to use and to bring the pay for women to observed level of men. So, if they have ratings equal to men through, or it could be any other system through which I'm judging their productivity, and if they have same productivity, then I would be paying the same comparable worth. So, guys, it says comparable worth is a policy that involves using expert to assign points to each job according to the knowledge, problem solving abilities required. So, again, these are the characteristics of your productivity, level of accountability, physical condition of work, perhaps other characteristics depending upon the job we are talking about. Jobs with equal point values receive equal pay. And of course, jobs assigned more points would receive higher point. Okay. So, greater the points that a particular job have, and if you are doing that job, then you will definitely be getting that. So, guys, this process by which points are awarded are critically believed. Some people have critically evaluated, and they say that there is an you can say expert bias in that. Of course, they would try to have that those who are critically evaluating, because ultimately, what would happen, that you try to give rating points to the female who is doing a job some less points. So, as a result, you make sure they are not comparably worth it. So, they give the less money. 1 second, guys, 1 second. Okay. So, guys, then opponents also claim that the job ratings can be used to unjustifiably raise pay in targeted job markets above market levels. While some, as I was saying, that some might say that they are used to so that we can unfairly lower the value of the women jobs. Okay, it could be used either way. That's the expert bias. Now, guys, one of the example which is there in the text, it's in the box. Okay, comparable worth with a university. So, guys, what they are talking about, they say that if you are a university professor, It doesn't matter which subject do you belong to, you should be given equal wages. Okay, so if you are an economics professor, if you are an English professor, the salary should be same. But now what happens, they are talking about two courses. One is a computer science course, other is your English course. Now of course computer science is in much larger demand, so there is a high demand relative to the supply of people who can train them. So what they are saying, of course, that's the argument, that if their demand is larger, then they should be given much higher wages. And the other subject they're talking about is English literature. Now in the English literature, what is happening, there's not larger demand, but we are still paying a greater wages to the professors, English professors. So now what happens, as I've written, one with a higher demand, other with a lower demand. One with a higher demand, wages would rise, employment would rise. The one with the low demand, wages would fall, and as a result, employment. But the comparable word says that wages need to be kept high. So guys, what would happen, so if I keep the wages for the English professors also high, but they don't have much demand, so what would happen, again there will be an excess supply in the market, so people would find lucrative to enter this profession because the wages are above the minimum wage which they should be actually getting up. When I say minimum wage, basically the intersection of demand and supply that I'm talking about. So a lot of people would get into. So ultimately, what happens? It would again lead to a large unemployment in the sector, or your for the English professors, and only those will be absorbed which would have a very high quality with respect to that high wage that a particular university is offering. So instead of what the comparable worth is doing, it is accentuating your unemployment problem in the market. Okay, because you don't have the demand, and I'm asking you to pay a much higher wage above the market clearing wage. So what would happen? A large unemployment, but the quality would be very good. But then I cannot give job to everyone because they don't deserve and there is no demand. So market plays a very important role. So guys, it says, but they have a comparable worth, wages kept high, demanding quality workers, but again employment would fall to a considerable way. Actually it is very difficult to trick the market will keep on balancing. So how to make sure that you are providing this comparable worth? Okay, so guys, taking a minute, I hope it's okay, it's clear. If there is a doubt, if there's a question, please ask. Guys, then I'm assuming it's okay, then I'm moving. Okay. So, yeah. So, guys, this there are certain critiques that argued about comparable worth wage adjustment by increasing the wages in female. Because, as I told you, ultimately, what does a comparable worth do? That wages increasing, there's no demand. So, as a result, your employment is definitely bound to fall. So, that is very negative impact. Rising wages would reduce the incentive also for the women to seek occupation. So as a result, they would ultimately be sticking to a job which are secondary jobs or an unskilled job. Also, some studies have found that a comparable wage adjustment didn't slow down the flow of women into a traditionally male occupation in the state and the local sector. They still confined to the sectors which they like to work. However, the only exception of a successful comparable worth law has been observed in Australia, okay, which has actually helped to narrow down the wage gap between the men and women. Okay, it's only with the case of Australia. So, guys, in the appendix, they are doing a certain numerical. Okay, so guys, I'll do the question. I'm not going into the text, so I'm just stopping and I'm going to the numerical file. Once, guys, I hope you have the text with you. Basically, your binder.
Yes, ma'am.
So, guys, for those who don't have the binder with them, I'm just showing you. So, guys, these are the back end questions for this chapter. Okay. So, we are doing one by one. So, guys, very carefully look into the first question, which I told you about. this is basically your wage segregation that we do. So how do we find out? It's about the index of dissimilarity. So guys, it's saying that please calculate the index of dissimilarity for male and females given the information below. So there are three occupation A, B, C. Number of people males working, number of females which are working. Of course, you can see 40, 20, 40, 25. It's only with the one where your females are working, there's a higher proportion. So how to calculate that? So guys, please have a look at the solution. 1 second. Yeah, guys, I hope this green text is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So guys, how do we do that? Very carefully see occupation ABC, males. So column till column 3 it is given to you. Okay, distribution of male and female in these occupation. So what we do, we first calculate the total number of males. So 100, total number of females 70. Now we are just converting the percentage of female to the male population. Or okay, so how do we do that? 40 divided by 100. This is male into your 70. 70 is the total number of female. So we are just converting your female percentage into the male percentage. Okay. So guys, once we do that for every occupation A, B, C, you would get certain values. 40 divided by 100 into 70, 28. 40 divided by 100, this is the male proportion into the total of your female occupation. Okay. 40 by 100 into 70 equal to 28. Similarly, for the last one, 20 divided by 100 into 70 equal to 14. So, guys, what is happening? Now, what we have to do, basically, guys, look into what I have written. Assuming that the workers of one gender remain in their job, the index of dissimilarity, what does it do? It indicates the percentage of other group that would have to change occupation for the second gender to have equal occupational distribution. So, meaning that we need to have equal number of proportion of your male and female into that particular occupation. So meaning that if there are 20 males, then 20 females should be there. So what we are saying, let us keep male, let us have this much proportion of male. Corresponding to that, what should be the proportion of female working in the occupation A, B, and C? So, guys, this is what we have done 28, 28, 14. This should be the proportion. Now, the thing is, we need to balance it out. So, guys, 28 is required. So, female is 20. So, how much is the change? 8. It's okay. We can manage that. Whereas for the second one also 28 minus 25, it's a positive number. It's okay. We can keep it. Whereas in the third one, what is happening? Your proportion of, you can say, male percentage is 14, whereas for the female it is 25. That is, it's a negative number minus 11. So what they are saying, now what we have to do, plus 8 plus 3, 11. The third one is minus 11. So what we say, let us ask these 11 female to enter into the occupation A and B, because there is an excess of proportion of them in the occupation C. So in order to have similarity, what we will do, we will ask these minus 11 to move into these two occupations. Or because we are trying to find out the index of dissimilarity, it would be what? Only minus 11, which is a negative number, divided by the number of total females in these three occupations. So minus 11 divided by 70, which should be somewhere around 15.7. So that becomes your index of dissimilarity value. There's a disproportion in this sector. Whereas in the other two sectors, it's fine, it's positive. They are getting equal pay. So there is no issue with that. So guys, it says that assume that the males stay in the same job and then find the number of females in the each job that would give them in the same percentage distribution as male. So wherever the values will be positive, meaning that they have equal proportion. So we don't need to change. But wherever there will be a negative value, that means they need to change job. They are actually in abundant and they would not be paid a equal or a fair pay. So as per the table or the column 4, 11 females need to change jobs. These 11 leave the occupation C and move into the occupations A and B. So 11 females equal to 15.7, which is 11 divided by 17 to 100 of the total, which is referred as your index of dissimilarity. Guys, please ask if you're able to understand this question or not.
Ma'am, can you explain column 4? What we have calculated in 4?
So what we are doing once we calculate your uh, so what we are doing in basically, let me explain the column, yeah, column 4. So what is happening in column 4? We are trying to find out the proportion of female percentage equal to the male percentage. So given the male percentage, what is the proportion of female percentage employed in that occupation? So guys, I'm repeating, I'm saying that what is the proportion of female percentage equal to the male percentage in various occupation. So guys, index of dissimilarity actually tells you that there should be an equal proportion of people, that is male and female, in every occupation. So in order to find out whether there is a disproportion or not, I have to convert one. Either male should be converted into a female proportion, or female proportion should be converted into a male proportion. So I'm just converting. It's a simple mathematical thing that I'm doing. Okay. So what I'm doing, 40 divided by 100. This is the male into 70. So 28%. It's equivalent to the 28% of the female. 40 divided by 100 into 70, 28% female. 20 divided by 100 into 17, 14% of female. So I'm just converting to find out whether that proportion is fair enough or not, because I'm saying it should be equal proportion. Now in order to find out whether it's a equal proportion or not, what I will do, once I convert this into, you can say, a female proportion, actual number of females are 20, 25, 25. Okay, that is the actual values which are given. And when I convert that, I'm given 28. So I will subtract whether it's a plus, whether it's a minus. So 28 minus 28, it's a plus value. So that means there is abundance, they can stay in this job. That's fine. Similarly, the third one, 28 minus 25, 3, it's a plus value, it's abundant. They can stay in the job. Whereas in the third one, it's only 14, whereas this is 25. So there is a negative number. So they are in abundant, you can say. They cannot soak. So or they are in abundant, meaning that they would not be paid fair enough. So as a result, what we will say, that in the other two sectors there is still a scope to absorb them. Okay, so what we will say, that please leave the occupation C and you could move to the occupation A and B. So guys, one thing I would tell you, that we are calculating index. Okay, so index would always have a value equal to 1 or 100%. So maybe in the paper, I'm just telling you that instead of occupation A, B, C, you would be given occupation A, B, C, D, E, F, many occupation. But please remember, once you calculate this number needing to change. So if one of the values would be 5, 6, other becomes minus 11 or any, so all the values should be nullified into 0. So you could see plus 8 plus 3 minus 11, 0. So all these values should be nullified into 0. Please remember, that's a trick, because it's an index. So if any value comes out to be minus 4, minus 3, minus 2, something like that, it should be equivalent to all the positive values. Okay, so guys, basically whatever the negative value comes at, it shows the index of dissimilarity, meaning that I have a larger proportion of female, or I'm crowding out the sector. So as a result, if there's a large abundance of female, I will be paying them less. So this becomes minus 11, becomes the value of dissimilarity. So 11 divided by the 17, total number of female, into 100, 15.7 is your index value. I hope it is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
So I hope it's clear to everyone.